it's rare that I feel personally victimized by a show. Even the worst fan service shows were the ones that require you to be utterly brain dead to get any enjoyment out of. And then there are the ones that strike a little too close to home. Genshiken is just one of these shows. Now, at the time this was first being released, I was also heavy into Comic Party, so seeing the two get juxtaposed so very hard was kind of whiplash. Of course, as I got older, I found both of them interesting in their own ways, but I'll come back around to that one. It's interesting to look at various anime that come out centered around a certain subculture and see what pretenders or counterpoints prop up. For example, as successful as Shirobako was with critics, then there was New Game that tried to do the same thing but with video games, which incidentally failed miserably. Conversely, look at all the idol shows out right now and how they run the gamut of, yay, it's fun to be idols, to, boy, it sucks to be an idol. For every series, there is a counterpoint, which makes disseminating them kind of an interesting ride. So when the crosshairs swing around to otaku culture, what do we end up with? Well, Comic Party doesn't really have much in the way of grounding, that's for goddamn sure. It's a screwball comedy series in which Kazuki, an otherwise normal dude, is sucked into the wacky, crazy world of anime and doujinshi, and it's all in good fun. Genshiken, on the other hand? Well, let's just say that if you've ever been to an anime club, you know all the characters already. The first thing that should be readily obvious to you is that they had to create their own anime to poke fun at, since who was really going to let them just take shots at their stuff? Plus, this way they could really have a go at the anime industry without having to actually kick anybody in the dick. It makes sense. If you want to poke fun at the weird, banal shows that suffuse the industry, then you probably want to make sure you have your ass covered, and you want to make sure that it's probably just as banal and weird as you can muster. And so it begins with the show Kujibiki Unbalanced, which may lead viewers to a tad bit of confusion. You should notice rather quickly just how vibrant and bright the colors are, and then immediately feel like you've grown cataracts when you see our main character Kanji Sasahara in his dorm. Yes, this muted color scheme is designed with extreme counterbalance to the anime. And the character designs match up. No big googly eyes here, kids. No, Sasahara and his group are much more plain Jane than a fair few other characters that were being designed in this era, and with good reason. As this is supposed to take place in modern Japan, at least for 2004, all the characters look roughly like people who were going to college for the first time in 2004 in modern Japan. Shocker. No screwball hairstyles, no weird colors without an explanation, and even their fashion is kind of blasé. The next set of characters we meet, speaking of fashion, are Makoto Kosuka and Saki Kasukabe, who you may notice are both blonde. This is not a natural occurrence, and it is explicitly spelled out later, especially when Kasukabe and Ono are talking about hairstyles. Kosuka is a generally oblivious otaku, but he's got some sense to him, and Kasukabe is generally disgusted with otaku to the point of comedic violence. The remaining characters, Madarame is the ringleader, Tanaka is the cosplay expert, and Kugiyama is the fat kid with the stutter, and they're basically who you'd expect. So what happens when you get all these wild characters together?
But I like the screen captures.
There were already comments by French people. What a laugh.
Yes, tragically, the Society for the Study of Modern Visual Culture, shortened to Genshiken, does not do too terrible much when they're in the club room. Mostly what they do is talk about Kujibiki Unbalanced like it's anti-Twitter and the latest disposable snarkbait show just came on. Except for some reason none of them can quite catch on just how completely banal and uninspired it is, nor do they comment about just how ludicrous the premise is.
Anime turns everybody into a critic.
You can say that again.
Haha, suck my knob, you fang-mouthed fuck. I suppose you can't really lose the plot thread if there's no real plot to follow, but it does shy away from the usual nonsense when it comes to quote-unquote episodes. You know the kind I mean, don't you? The stereotypical anime episodes. However, if there were more otaku-centric shows out there, I'd say this one would be a codifier for what the stereotypical otaku anime episodes would be. Twice in the show they go to Kamiket, vaguely disguised as Kami Fest, where they go and buy doujinshi, all of which seems really lame. Now, it may have something to do with the way Kujibiki Unbalanced is designed that really fails to excite me, but when even the fake anime in the series seems fucking bleh, it can't be just me, right? I gotta say, I think something is wrong when even the otaku feel like outsiders in your otaku comedy series. This show has the amazing ability to be at once very, very relevant and yet extremely outdated. One of the most notable ways in which it is outdated is that there are only 2 women in the first season, for the most part, and one of them isn't an otaku at all. It may be my own ignorance speaking, but if I understand things correctly, there's a pretty sizable population of female otaku out there, at least nowadays. And of course now we call them Fujoshi. Admittedly, it may be the way that this particular club breaks down. They bring up female members of the manga club later in the OVA, but even then it feels kind of like a gimme. So earlier I talked about comparing it to Comic Party, and I gotta say, if Comic Party is the squeaky clean version, then this is the really dirty version of otakudom. They have some really unfortunately cripplingly frank conversations about fap material. They get caught up in trying to maintain the look of being an otaku.
Isn't it embarrassing to go to Comic Fest with a tan?
It sure is.
And are generally the kind of fairly likable but remarkably scuzzy stereotypes that you see gathering in the corners of conventions. It certainly doesn't shy away from it, and rather revels in it from time to time. Further than that, we have a whole lot of scenes, some even as big as whole episodes, that are dedicated to causing the kind of full-body cringe that most people would clock as a seizure. I've lived this sort of thing. I don't need to see it again in glorious widescreen, dig? I suppose I should give it props for being a slice-of-life show that doesn't make me want to fillet a shotgun, but I seem to remember being much less critical of it when I was just a young prof. I think part of it may have to do with the fact that I can kind of see through it at this point. It's really easy to see just how mundane it is and how many of the jokes and gags came from the same sort of bin Big Bang Theory gets it from. However, where this succeeds is that it's not written by assholes, and while it doesn't really love its characters over much, they're likable enough throughout the course of things to make it feel genuine. What you're going to get out of Genshiken is about as much as you want, because when all is said and done, it's a show about an anime club. It's important to remember that it does change up a bit as the series progresses into the second season and beyond, but that's a story for another episode. I will say that this is one of the shows that I have watched in dub to begin with, and have trouble remembering that it actually has a Japanese audio track. It's not a painful series to listen to, and all the characters are pretty well represented in English. Of course, when you're playing nerds, it's easy to make them sound authentic. The voices aren't all that far off from the original voice track, and it makes a big difference in making the English feel like it's a good fit. Also, veteran voice actress Rachel Lillis shows up as Ono the cosplay girl, and she gets to dig deep into that hidden core of weird that I think every actor has for this one. Special nod also goes out to Kasakabe's voice actress Carol Jacobanis for being convincing as well, because out of all of the characters she has the greatest emotional range. Also, "say what bitch" is probably my favorite line in this entire series.
Say what, bitch?
One of the big reasons I think that the dubcast works so well is that they're not hugely well-known voice actors in this day and age. Well, I'm sure if it was dubbed nowadays, it would have your usual blend of extremely talented and criminally underpaid VAs, but with this crew, you get none of the, "oh, hey there, voice actor, I remember you from X," which lends it a certain credibility. So, what do I really think of Genshiken overall? It's a pretty great little show that is sadly tarnished by sheer dint of natural degradation that comes with shows set in the quote-unquote modern day. They're playing with PS2s and PSPs after all, it's bound to show some rust. While this is a tragic fact of life, it hits more than it misses when it's comedy, even if it does make me want to pull my hair out for some episodes with the kind of cringe it causes. So the real question is this: did they learn anything from this in the second season? And to that I will say, find out next time.